There are men in history who never needed to say much. Sugar Ray Robinson was one of them. In 40 years of fighting, he let his fists do the talking. He was not a man who was easily impressed. He was not a man who showed emotion in public. He was not a man who gave compliments freely, which is exactly why what he said to Bruce Lee backstage that evening, 3 words spoken quietly to no one in particular, hit everyone in that hallway like a thunderclap. Nobody present forgot those 3 words, and by the end of this story, you will understand exactly why. The greatest fighter nobody could touch. Before we get to the hallway, before we get to those 3 words, you need to understand who Sugar Ray Robinson actually was, because the name gets repeated so often it loses its weight. People say, one of the greatest, the way they say, have a nice day, automatically, without feeling it. So let's feel it for a moment. Sugar Ray Robinson fought professionally from 1940 to 1965. 200 fights, 173 wins, 108 knockouts. He held the World Welterweight Championship. He held the World Middleweight Championship 5 times. He lost the middleweight title and won it back twice. Muhammad Ali called Sugar Ray Robinson the greatest fighter who ever lived. Not one of the greatest, the greatest. When the man Muhammad Ali calls the greatest walks into a room, the room changes. The air changes. People who have been in combat their whole lives feel something shift in their chest. Sugar Ray Robinson commanded that kind of space. Effortlessly, automatically, the way gravity commands things, not by trying, but simply by existing. He was 47 years old when he met Bruce Lee, long retired from the ring, but still carrying every ounce of that presence. Still the kind of man who made champions feel like beginners just by standing near them. And he had never, not once in his public life, been visibly shaken by meeting another fighter. Until that backstage hallway. The event nobody planned on. It was a charity event in Los Angeles, the kind of evening where celebrities and athletes share the same building without necessarily sharing the same world. Everyone has their own orbit. Everyone has their own gravitational pull. Bruce Lee was there because he had been asked to give a martial arts demonstration. By this point, early 1970s, he was becoming impossible to ignore. The television work, the whispers from Hollywood, the stories that moved through the martial arts community like electricity. Sugar Ray Robinson was there as a guest of honor, a living legend being celebrated. He had done his part of the evening early and was moving through the backstage corridors with the easy, unhurried confidence of a man who has earned the right to take up space wherever he goes. They were not supposed to meet. There was no planned introduction, no publicist engineering a handshake for photographs. It just happened. A corridor, a moment. 2 men walking toward each other from opposite ends of a hallway. The people who witnessed it said afterward that both men seemed to slow down at exactly the same moment, as if they had recognized something in each other from 20 feet away. The way certain animals do. The way people who have spent their lives in real danger develop a sense for others who have done the same. They stopped, facing each other. And everything that happened next took less than 4 minutes. But those 4 minutes have been talked about ever since. The false peace, when legends meet legends. The introduction was made by someone nearby, names exchanged, hands shaken, and for the first 30 seconds, it was perfectly normal. 2 professionals meeting, polite, warm even. Sugar Ray Robinson had the manners of a man raised right. Bruce Lee had the warmth of someone who genuinely liked people, who was curious about everyone he met. They talked briefly about the event, about Los Angeles, about the crowd upstairs, the people watching relaxed. This was just 2 famous men being pleasant to each other in a corridor. Nothing unusual, nothing extraordinary. That relaxation lasted exactly as long as Bruce Lee needed it to last. Because then someone, one of the people standing nearby, trying to make conversation, said something that changed the entire energy of the hallway. They said, "Maybe you 2 should compare notes sometime. Different styles, but both at the top of their game." It was meant as a harmless compliment, the kind of thing you say to fill silence at events like this. Sugar Ray Robinson looked at Bruce Lee, and for the first time that evening, something shifted in his eyes. Not hostility, something more careful than that. The look of a man who has spent 40 years reading opponents and has just been handed an unexpected puzzle. He said, "What exactly is it that you do?" 3 seconds of silence, and then Bruce Lee smiled. "If you love Bruce Lee stories, subscribe. I post rare stories every day." What Bruce Lee did instead of answering. Bruce Lee did not answer with words. He never answered that kind of question with words. Because words about movement are always less than the movement itself. And Bruce Lee understood this better than almost anyone alive. Instead, he said, "May I show you something? It will only take a moment." Sugar Ray Robinson studied him for a beat, then nodded once. The nod of a man who has agreed to something without being entirely sure what he has agreed to. Bruce Lee asked him to stand naturally. Just stand. No guard, no preparation, just a man standing in a hallway. Robinson did, with the relaxed readiness of someone whose body had spent decades making readiness look like relaxation. And then Bruce Lee moved. Not toward Robinson, not threatening, just moved. A single sequence of motion, flowing, connected, impossibly precise, that lasted maybe 5 seconds. But those 5 seconds, every person in that hallway went completely still. Not politely still, involuntarily still. The kind of stillness your body creates when your brain is working too hard to send signals to your limbs. Because what they saw was not a demonstration. It was not performance. It was something that existed in the space between categories, between styles, between anything any of them had a name for. Sugar Ray Robinson watched every millisecond of it. His expression did not change. That was the remarkable thing. The face of a man with 40 years of discipline held perfectly steady. But his eyes told a completely different story. What Robinson saw that nobody else could. Here is the thing about having Sugar Ray Robinson watch you move. Most people in that hallway saw something spectacular, something fast and fluid and impressive. They saw a great martial artist demonstrating his art. Sugar Ray Robinson saw something different, something more specific, something that only a man who has spent 40 years inside the science of human combat at the highest level could see. He saw efficiency, not the showy efficiency of a tournament competitor, the deep, ruthless, structural efficiency of someone who has stripped away everything unnecessary and kept only what is true. Every movement exactly as large as it needed to be, and not one fraction larger. Every transition between positions carrying no wasted energy, no telegraphing, no setup, no moment where intention preceded action by even a fraction of a second. Robinson had fought 200 professional fights. He had stood across the ring from some of the most dangerous men of the 20th century. He had learned to read bodies the way scholars read ancient texts, finding meaning in the smallest details, the tiniest signals. And what he read in Bruce Lee's body in those 5 seconds was something he had only ever encountered in one other place, in himself, in his absolute prime, when he was the most dangerous welterweight on the planet, and he knew it in his bones without needing anyone to confirm it. That recognition, that specific, deeply personal recognition, is what changed his face. Not admiration, recognition. One apex predator seeing another and knowing it instantly and completely. The conversation that followed. After the demonstration they talked, properly this time. The pleasantries were finished. Robinson asked about training, not the mechanics, he could see the mechanics. He asked about philosophy, about how Bruce Lee thought about an opponent, about what happened in his mind in the moment before contact. Bruce Lee asked Robinson the same questions in return, with genuine hunger, because Bruce Lee studied everyone. He believed that every master of any physical discipline had found a piece of the same truth from a different angle, and he wanted every piece he could find. Robinson talked about something he called reading the intention behind the eyes. The idea that a fighter's body always lied, muscle memory, trained responses, deliberate feints. But the eyes, if you could look past the eyes and into the intention behind them, you got 1 full second of advance notice. 1 second in a fight is an eternity. Bruce Lee went very quiet when Robinson said this. Then he said, "That is exactly it. That is precisely it. I have been trying to say this for years, and you just said it better than I have ever managed." Sugar Ray Robinson looked at him for a long moment. Then he said something that nobody in the hallway expected. Something that reframed the entire conversation that had just happened. He said, "You already knew it. You just needed to hear it said out loud." That kind of generosity, that recognition that another person's insight belongs to them even before they can articulate it, that is the rarest quality in competitive people. The willingness to give someone back their own discovery. If you love Bruce Lee stories, subscribe. I post rare stories every day. The moment everything stopped. The climax. The conversation wound down naturally. The event upstairs was calling both of them back. People were waiting. They shook hands again. The kind of handshake that means something, where both hands grip and neither person rushes to let go. And then Sugar Ray Robinson turned to leave. He took 3 steps down the corridor. Then he stopped. He didn't turn around fully, just half a turn, enough to be heard. And in a voice quiet enough that some people in the hallway had to lean in to catch it, he said 3 words. Just 3. He is real. Not to Bruce Lee, not directed at anyone in particular. Said the way a man says something he is saying to himself, processing out loud. A conclusion arrived at after 40 years of knowing exactly what real looks like. Then he kept walking. Disappeared around the corner. Gone. The hallway was completely silent for several seconds, because everyone there understood what those 3 words meant coming from that man. Sugar Ray Robinson, who had faced the best fighters of 4 decades, who had been called the greatest by the man Muhammad Ali himself, had just looked at Bruce Lee and delivered the only verdict that mattered. Not, he is impressive. Not, he is talented. Not, he is remarkable for his style. He is real. Real. The way Robinson himself was real. The way only the genuinely rare ones are real. The kind of real that cannot be faked or manufactured or trained into someone who doesn't already carry it. Bruce Lee stood in that hallway and said nothing. He didn't smile, didn't react for the cameras. He just nodded once, quietly, to himself, as if he had just received something he had been working toward his entire life and didn't want to disturb it by reacting too loudly. What those 3 words actually meant. In the days and weeks that followed, several people who had been in that hallway told the story to others, and every single time they included those 3 words. Because those 3 words were the whole story, everything else was context. But what did Robinson mean? What is the difference between real and everything else? Here is what 40 years inside professional combat teaches you if you pay attention. There are fighters who are excellent, who have trained hard, who have talent, who have won titles and earned respect. The world is full of them, and they are genuinely impressive. And then there are the ones who are operating from somewhere deeper, somewhere that training points toward but cannot reach by itself. A place where the body and the mind and something harder to name all arrive at the same moment and move as one thing instead of 3. That place cannot be performed, cannot be faked for even 5 seconds in front of someone who knows what it looks like. Sugar Ray Robinson had lived in that place. He knew its texture and its temperature and its weight. He had felt it in himself on the nights he was truly alive inside a fight. And he had just watched a 32-year-old martial artist from Hong Kong, standing in a backstage corridor, access it effortlessly and completely. He is real. 3 words, a lifetime of knowledge behind them, the highest compliment one master can pay another. The moral hit, the question this story asks. Here is the things nobody talks about when they tell him what he could do. The speed, the power, the philosophy, the legend. But the more interesting question, the one this story quietly asks, is why people like Sugar Ray Robinson recognized it so immediately and so completely. Because Robinson had met famous people. He had met athletes with incredible reputations. He had shaken hands with champions from every sport and every decade. And he had never stopped in a corridor and said those 3 words about any of them. What was different about Bruce Lee? The answer is the same answer it always is when we talk about the truly rare ones. Bruce Lee was not trying to be Bruce Lee. He was not managing a reputation or protecting an image or performing a version of himself calibrated for maximum impression. He was just entirely, completely, uncomplicatedly himself. And people who have spent their lives around human beings at the highest level of physical and mental development can feel that instantly. They can feel the difference between a person who has arrived at themselves and a person who is still performing the journey. Robinson felt it in 5 seconds. The question worth sitting with is this: in your own life, in whatever arena you inhabit, are you real? Not impressive, not successful, not skilled, real. Because real is the only thing that stops a Sugar Ray Robinson in a corridor and makes him say something he didn't plan to say.